Wow, thank you so much. It's super impressive. So big thanks for all the scenarios. And if you allow, I would have the advocate of the devil scenario to ask about. So now imagine I'm the owner of an industrial process that makes a lot of money out of something that is on the market. I don't want to remove it from the market, and it emits a lot of air pollutants. Is there a scenario where I can use the VALESOR tool to actually downplay the health impacts? So, because you show that you can change so many things yourself, so can it be that we end up in a situation where actually, if I don't want to see any policy going against my, my plant or whatever it is, that I can use it to say, actually, the figures of the official that you were talking about is not true because this is what I found. So basically, the essence of the question is, can you actually minimize the valuation if you can change so many things? Thank you so much.
If I understand the questions correctly, is it about like you want to optimize the tool that it provides the minimum the value of exposure that means that you don't need to remove your activity? I mean, the exposure option, such optimization is really not possible, if I understood your question correctly.
No, I think it was rather that can a user, if you write down values of the VALES and health effects and put them very low, then you can get that the costs of, can you then make those changes and spit out the results with a VALESOR stamp?
Well, probably not with a VALESOR stamp. As we need to put some disclaimer text or something that we provide default values that are based on the latest scientific results and recommended by the experts. But you, as a user, you are able to change those numbers. You can put the, like, I don't know, you can set volume and VSL to 0, but then I don't think it should be stamped as VALESOR results. It will be like user-made changes. Don't have any like any basis, any reliable background. So, well, but in theory, yeah, in practice, it can be like you can modify those values as you want.
I think Mike has some input here.
Yeah, I'm reminded of a derogation application under the IED that was made by the operator of a very large and very polluting power station, where they claim to have done a full impact pathway analysis for the power station in question, and they came up with damage costs that were very small. In the application, they also looked at damage per tonne numbers that had been generated in work for the European Environment Agency that I've also been involved with, and they dismissed those because they said that their method was better. The application in question dealt with sulfur dioxide emissions, and they completely ignored the secondary aerosol formation linked to SO2, which will drive most of the SO2 related damage that we quantify. So the potential to come up with absolute nonsense numbers is, I mean, it's already out there, whether or not it's dressed up around this tool or not. I think what we need to provide or sort of ask of users is that they fully document the assumptions that have gone into the analysis that they've been doing. If they've used the default VALESOR assumptions, then great, they don't need to make any comment around that beyond saying that they've used the default. If they've not used the default, then they should document in full what changes have been made. So I think we can include that in sort of requested conditions of use. I don't think we can't insist that people follow them, but I think we can put it down as a requested condition of use. If they don't then abide by those conditions of use, if they don't provide the full information, then it's an easy sort of way to discredit the analysis that they've done. I mean, for the particular derogation application I'm thinking of, it was very obvious that something was completely wrong with the analysis that had been done. They marked all of the papers concerned confidential, and were not at all happy that legal action was suggested by the fact that somebody had sent me a copy of this this analysis. But you know, you didn't, in that particular case, you didn't need to see the analysis to work out that something was seriously wrong. There are other cases where, you know, people could be a bit more nuanced about it and just sort of wind down numbers until they get to the estimates that that suit their case. But again, you know, if that is going away from the VALESOR defaults, then yeah, that should be identified. And if people aren't providing that level of information, then the analysis that they're doing isn't worth the paper or disk that it's written on, or whatever.
Yep. We have a question hand up from Sten here.
Yes, thank you for presenting this nice tool. In your list of health effects, you had long-term exposure, but you also had short-term exposure. But in your examples, you only, you know, provided the annual average concentration levels for an entire country, right? So, I mean, how do you calculate the short-term effects, and do you need to input, you know, peak values or whatever? Yeah.
And that, yeah, go for you, Katarina.
I'm not really sure I can answer that. Maybe someone, some health expert can help me there, because yeah, I know we only have one exposure data, which is for year average, but short-term exposure we do have it in the list. And maybe not. We don't have it as we don't have as a default option for PM at least. But we need to check that exposure and this health outcomes are harmonized. But Simona, did you want to comment on this?
Well,
Was it the question?
You know, I think there are people who are better placed to answer this, but as I don't see any hands up. So what we are calculating are short-term effects on an annual average basis. We are not calculating with the tool currently for a specific episode, which where we would maybe calculate for the pollution that you observe over 3 days or something. So what we are calculating as a default in this tool is for short-term impacts the annual average that comes out. Maybe Mike can correct me if that was not correct.
No, it's yeah, it's the results that we're generating here are based on an annual basis. So the what by putting in the annual, for example, the annual mortality rate or annual number of hospital admissions alongside the annual exposure data, you will get the sort of aggregate effect of those sort of short-term exposures over the year. If you wanted to look at specific episodes, you would need to get into the data and adjust some of the things that are present there. So, for example, if you're interested in an episode of increased PM 2.5 or ozone or whatever over a period of 1 week, you would need to adjust the incidence data to reflect the the mortality or number of hospital admissions over that period, and then you could use the tool on a sort of episodic basis. But most of the time, we're looking at effects aggregated up to the impacts over 1 year, whether they're long-term or from long-term exposure or short-term exposure.
We're getting some thanks for interesting presentations and questions about the Chem module. So Enrico asks whether it's possible to have to upload a gridded map of concentrations instead of population-weighted averages as input. So basically having them, nope. So the model will have to use population-weighted instead of concentrations. And then also, of course, as Enrico said, about the code to perform the calculations was interesting. Antoine, your hand is up.
Yes. It's to reply about this topic. Hi, Enrico. There it's not possible in the frame of the tool to display the gridded map. But in the exposure data by default that are provided, you have the link with the reference, with the contact, where you can have also you can have a view of the data that are publicly available. So those that are the concentration fields are in open access for most of them. So just what I wanted to precise.
Okay, thank you.
This Antoine, is also the link is to this is only concentration data, right? So no, like it's not to not be population weighted only if you
exactly.
Those,
because there in the question of Enrico, it was to upload a gridded map of concentration.
Yes,
exactly. It's not the you will not be able to have a map of the population weighted concentration.
If I can.
No, but the question, sorry, was a bit different. Was instead of putting the population weighted average value, to have a gridded map of concentration that goes as input. So I have my own computed by EMAP, for example, as Mike was mentioning. And I mean, because I was also wondering, for sure you analyzed also the AirQ Plus tool, but I see a lot of similarities. So I was wondering, if you can also stress which are the differences between this tool and the AirQ Plus. Because also there, I know that there is a discussion about the option to upload gridded map instead of population weighted average values. So if you can also clarify about the differences between this tool and the AirQ Plus. Thank you.
I personally am not very familiar with AirQ Plus, but probably the updated health outcomes and exposure response functions, that those updates done within the VALESOR tool within the latest years, and also updates in the cost sets and its distribution of cost sets by component. This is I would point out as differences because this updates maybe not done in parallel in the other models, but maybe someone else has more experience with AirQ Plus.
Well, I would hope that this model will be a bit more user-friendly than what I think the AirQ Plus has been when I've been trying to use it, or when I've had used it and looked at it. It has been, to my mind, a bit cumbersome, a bit messy to work with. And I hope that there's step-by-step instructions and the possibility to clearly show what you can choose and not choose, and that the user have more control over the numbers that goes in and the results thereby that comes out. So that's a hope, at least, that we have done a model that is more user-friendly in that way, and that is clearer, more transparent. That I think would be,
There's also the valuation side of it that is not something that AirQ Plus is.
Oh, yes, I forgot.
True.
Sorry.
The cost part.
It's the
gone
part.
into. It would be Joseph Spadaro, also part of the team but not on the call today, is actually active both in VALESOR and with WHO, and I mean he's developed the Climate H model, which is not that dissimilar to AirQ Plus. I think he's in a sort of better position to reflect on what the differences are. So perhaps we can we'll ask Joe for his opinions on that.
Yeah.
I can maybe answer questions about the CHEM model when it will be available. Well, both models will be available by the end of the year, and our current ambition is to, if possible, to launch the tool in the late October. So let's see if it depends on the availability of certain data, but we are actively working on this CHEM model right now. So it will be available. Well, we need to populate with some, the intention is to populate it with some pollutants, and then to allow user to add own pollutants and own health outcomes and exposure response functions and other relevant data. So, well, at the next major event, maybe we can present, hopefully we can present this CHEM model then.
Yes. Do we have time to let people click on the link and try to access
maybe
the model?
I should put the link in here in this chat first. It will be easier. Of course, yeah, the idea was to let you test that tool.
Because we have 20 minutes left at least, so it would be good to see if it's possible with so many users at one time, at least.
That's a good question. Maybe.
And
there is a risk that it crashes. If it does, then
exactly.
Maybe.
Will we be able, those of us in this room, we will be able to create an overload crash of the IVL server. But Mike, you want to mention something as well?
Yeah, it's just in relation to Simon's question in the chat about the on the CHEM model extension. You mentioned single pollutant. Is this a single compound or a single related group? I mean, it could be either. One of the reasons for having separate air pollutant and chemical models is that with air pollutants, we know we're dealing with a restricted group of substances. We know that there is good agreement on what the response functions should be for those pollutants. So it's in many ways it's a more straightforward setup for air pollution. We know more precisely what we're dealing with and what users are going to want. When it comes to the world of chemicals more generally, we're conscious of the enormous number of chemicals that are out there that people are interested in. There's also varying views on the health impacts linked to different substances. There's different views, for example, on whether for a particular substance you just look at sort of one effect or a whole series of effects. There's been some sort of very interesting research in the past on the economic consequences of lead and mercury, and if you take a sort of traditional view of the health impact assessment and valuation for both of those, you would really focus just on one or two impacts, particularly the reduction in IQ. Whereas if you look at the broader consequences of exposure to lead and mercury, then you would add in a whole load of other impacts. So there's a whole load of questions around how how you should do that work for chemicals. So with the chemicals module, what we're looking at is something that is where users play a larger role in inputting the data. What we'll provide is the structure. What we can provide is the background, a lot of the background information there, and that will hopefully sort of help users come up with their own estimates, and also some sort of sense check as to whether their estimates are in the right ballpark. A lot of the time with the other chemicals, we're dealing with exposures that are much smaller than we have for the air pollutants here. There is potential there for making fairly simple errors relating to the order of magnitude of the impact. So we're developing that tool to try and put people on the right path and not make those kinds of errors. I mean, on that basis, you could enter, if you wanted to deal with a substance, whether it is all PCBs or an individual congener, you could enter the data for whatever level you wanted to look at, and you would be expected to then come up with response functions yourself, but information, populations, valuations, etc., that should be coming out from the VALESOR inputs. So it's kind of a different beast, the chemicals module, but yeah, I would hope it could do both.
Yeah, that's good discussion. Thanks for the questions. Also, I have Simon added about the short-term exposure on smoke exposure from wildfires, if that would be some future use of it. But then I guess we would have, do we even have exposure response for coefficients for those acute events? I've understood that short-term exposure is a 1-year exposure at least. But acute events like wildfires, do we have exposure response coefficients from the epidemiology on that?
Well, we had the short-term functions.
Yeah, but for how long? I thought they were for a longer time period.
If you adjust the incidence data to reflect whatever period you're interested in, then you would get the short-term effect of that exposure.
Yeah. That might be an add-on. You can find some funds for us, Simon, and we will make it happen. Have anybody tried to test the model? I'm playing around with a couple of scenarios myself, and I'm wondering how many of you are actually on the model website or the VALESOR tool website, because it worked surprisingly fast for me. And then I know that I'm sitting in a shabby hotel with poor Wi-Fi, so I'm very surprised that it was so fast.
So 36 persons it can handle.
Apparently it can, which is more than it will ever be experiencing again. So that was very, very nice. Well done, our dear software developers, if you're still with us. Yes, we have Eric there. So apparently it managed. Did you see any traffic? How much traffic do you have to the tool? Eric, can you see that?
Checked. I could look at that. Just a second.
Meanwhile, maybe I can comment on the code. That I don't have any answer for that right now, but I guess it depends on what kind of restrictions we do have according to grant agreement, if we can pull the code online. Right now, I don't remember exactly if we are restricted there, and so if we can technically,
I think it's usually the opposite with the tax finance research, that they want us to put as much as possible out there. I'm just not sure how, sort of, again, relating a bit to, I mean, there are some, yes, there's open data, open modeling, open models and all that. So I'm quite sure that the EU
the code is also
encourages this, but we have to remember that we need to talk to Daniel about intellectual property documentation. So we have a colleague who's not with us here today, who went through all this of data management and intellectual property thingies, as it's called in legalese. And we will have to double check with those who have dug deeper into this, what is actually supposed to be open and what should be open and what can be open, etc., etc. We really don't want to force IVL to give any user a backdoor into the IVL server. So there are those concerns as well. Well, I would assume it's rolling, Eric, from an IVL. Is it a completely external site from IVL, or is it?
As a site, yes, it's external. I mean, it's running on our servers, which are just in the cloud generally. But yeah, you're right in the sense that there could be parts of the code that would need to probably not be shown to anyone outside of IVL. Perhaps modified for those purposes. I guess the big thing is that there's basically no way to open source this project as it is. It's relying on a lot of proprietary technologies, not just IVLs, but other companies that. But that's a different question as for the actual algorithms.
No, it's I would have suspected something like that.
Unfortunately, I can't really find any numbers on how many people are using it right now because we don't have any tracking turned on.
No. Okay. Cool. Yeah. I'm curious. I know that Katarina, when you held your demonstration, you presented a couple of scenarios to us, and so the user scenarios, right? And when I now at the output selection file here, do I have the chance to show multiple scenario years at the same time, or is it I can show several scenarios, but can I see several scenario years, or will that is that a feature that we have dropped?
Yes, you can see different scenario years. It depends a bit on whether how many countries or regions you look at. If you have several countries, then and you have like more than one health outcome, then you need to select whether you see like all the countries aggregated, and then you see all scenarios and all years. Or you see only like one scenario a year combination, but all the countries in columns.
Yeah.
So this is, but yes, you will be able to see all scenario years. You can see I think I shown one for one health outcome case that there was one scenario and like 10 years. Trend diagram. So the trends should be available. A user manual is not there yet. It will be. So it should be quite intuitive, or we hope it is a bit intuitive after this demonstration. But yeah, of course, the intention is to develop a manual and put it a link in the tool itself. And also, it says information boxes, except for the manual, that at each stage you'll be able to press this icon and see some guidance on how to choose different options and different guidance information there.
Okay, yeah, so the user manual will come, and it seems to be working. And there is a hand from Sten again. No, the hand is gone. No, it's up.
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
I have a question. I just tried it out for Denmark right now. So I chose the default concentration level for PM2.5 and NO2, which I think are reasonable. But then it calculates the number of the mortality for PM2.5 is I don't know, 1/3 or 40% higher than the calculations we do ourselves. And then there's also quite high numbers for NO2. This is maybe a factor of 10 higher than we calculate. So it seems like NO2 plays quite large role here.
Is that, do you look at the health impacts or valuation?
And now I look at the health outcome, so the number of
So the cases.
cases, yeah. So for like mortality, it's for PM2.5, it's 4,750, and for NO2, it's 2,600. And you know, when we do the calculation for Denmark, we get about half, and we get much less for NO2.
I think I understand that what might be the problem here, that we still have some all case mortality data to correct in the tool, because for cause specific mortality we have for now we have beta data in the tools. So for all cause mortality there might be some outcomes that do not really correspond to your own calculations, maybe. That's my guess what could be wrong there. That's why the explanation of this discrepancy. But we'll look into this further. Thank you for this.
Have you
Feedback.
Have you compared? I mean, the EEA also makes calculations like this for all the countries. So have you compared, you know, your results to their results?
Well, that I cannot answer right now because this piece of work is still in progress. Sorry, but Mike, maybe you could comment on that, or do you have any other comment? Or was it a question? You muted, Mike.
There's several reasons why the numbers might be different. The response functions that are being used, I doubt if there's much difference in the instance data that we're using. Another issue is whether you've got a counterfactual concentration included in the analysis or not. So there's sort of several reasons there. I mean, it'll be interesting to do some sort of further investigations and see exactly what is driving those differences. It's certainly something useful to do, and the comparison across different estimates, I think, will be a useful exercise.
We will have to address Olivier's question here. A good old traditional questions on the lag effects of difference from exposure and the occurrence or the incidence of a certain health outcome. What's the philosophy? I mean, right now, as far as I understand it, we don't really consider lag effects because we do scenario analysis. So there's a thinking that the effect will happen after a year or two. So it wouldn't make much effect. That this is my poor understanding. But what's has there been more thinking about lag effects, Mike, in the old auto oil or whatever external projects?
Well, of course, those you just mentioned work that's very old. There is more recent thinking, although a lot of it is still framed around work that the US EPA did quite a long time in talking about lags linked to mortality in particular. There was work last year that I was involved with in the UK where we looked at the effects of benefits for air pollution resulting from the UK's net zero policies, where we defined sort of lag systems for a whole range of morbidity effects, essentially those covered by the EMAPEC recommendations from WHO's covering diabetes, stroke, lung cancer, etc. For some of those effects, the lags don't make a lot of difference, but yeah, for some of them they do. And you might see, for example, a very limited impacts related to exposure in the current year or the next couple of years, and the impact's only sort of kicking in after that for some of the effects. For the purposes of this work, the main consequence, I think, is on the valuation side. So we need to sort of play that through and see whether how the valuations should be adjusted to reflect the lags that are present. But certainly, yeah, the phasing of the impacts is important.
Yeah. I remember having dropped this particular question some years ago when I saw that there was some sort of that the lag time wasn't long enough for it to be affecting the economic value to a very large degree. So it's just a couple of years, but that might have been old data. We are reaching the end of our time, and now you have played around a bit with the model, I hope. And I can tell Katarina and Mike that the presentation was appreciated by at least the chatters. And do we know how long will this particular link that people have used today, how long will it be active? Will there be a new link once for a new version of the tool, or how will the sort of the final tweaks of the model, will they all remain on this? Because it said web test, so I'm assuming this site is to be replaced at some point.
It's not temporary. This is the one we're using internally.
Okay.
So any update that we make to it will be reflected on the same URL, unless we change it later.
But then at the end of the day, it will be on the VALESOR webpage and others.
Yeah.
And then it would have another link. So at the end of the project, there will be another link at least. So if you're going to save this link, then you have to remember that it will only be valid for another 4 months, just so you know. But in the meantime, go ahead and play around with it as much as you can. If you find weird things in it, do inform us. Send all questions to Eric, so he will solve everything. Oh, sorry, Eric, you don't know me. This is my type of humor. Apologies. Send it to me, Katarina, or Mike, and we will try to get it into the model finalization. And people are really curious about when the CHEM model will be available, Katarina, and you said end October. Was that the guesstimate?
That is an intention. This is a guesstimate. So I mean, no guarantee at the moment, but that's our ambition at least.
Yep.
But I don't know, maybe test some kind of test version. Well, we are working on it. So
exactly. Work.
And maybe I can very quickly answer the question about the age distribution and incidence. It is available in the model for specific scenarios. So I didn't show it, but it is there under some menu rows.
Exactly. It's under the input data and the tabs to the left. You can really dig into the details there if you find the input data and then the tabs for exposure data, health outcomes, cost values, populations, and baseline health effects. So you can tweak the input data quite much. All right, then now the time is 7 o'clock here in Seoul, so it's time for me to have some dinner. And I thank you all. We thank you also very, very much for coming and checking. And please let us know if you find peculiarities in the model. And with this, I hope that we can say thank you, everybody, and goodbye. So have a great rest of the day and week. Take care.
Thank you.
Thanks also.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.